Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah? All right. I'm going to keep it brief. Professor Chomsky said he doesn't trust what newspapers print anyway, so I should spare the accolades, that he doesn't trust poll numbers, so I shouldn't cite the polls about him being the leading public intellectual and so forth. I'm going to keep this just to a few minutes and turn it over to our honored guest. Thank you for being here today. It's both a pleasure and an honor to welcome one of the world's leading public intellectuals and social activists here to UMass Boston, Boston's public university. Emeritus Professor of Linguistics at MIT, Noam Chomsky is author or co-author of over 100 books and hundreds, perhaps thousands of essays and interviews. Extending from 1957, his book, The Syntactic Structures, the first in a series of major works that would help to revolutionize the field of linguistics, to his seminal 1967 essay, The Responsibility of Intellectuals, where he challenged his peers and colleagues in academia and beyond to take a principled stand against unjust government policies, even at great personal cost in general, and against the Vietnam War in particular. Among his other classic works, and particularly valuable, memorable to me, is his influential co-authored book, Manufacturing Consent, from 1988, co-authored with Edward Herman, a book which offers a rigorously empirical critique of modern U.S. mass media as effectively a propaganda system for U.S. elite interests and government priorities. More recent texts include his best-selling critiques of U.S. foreign policy, including Hegemony or Survival from 2003, and the book Rogue States. Recipient of dozens of honorary degrees from across the world, Professor Chomsky has been prominently featured in over a dozen documentary films, and his Facebook page, or the Facebook page someone set up to honor him, has over 1 million likes. Which is to say, not only has Professor Chomsky's prolific intellectual work profoundly influenced his particular academic field, but it has reached a wide public audience in ways that few other U.S. academics can say. For over 50 years, he has been truly a public intellectual. And here I will mention a couple of polls, though Chomsky perhaps would suggest not to trust them. In 2005, a survey of scholars found that Chomsky was the most influential living public intellectual. Another study from the mid-1990s found that he had been cited in scholarly work more often than any other living public intellectual between 1980 and 1992, and in fact was in the top 5 for all scholars cited, living or dead. At 86, though formally retired from teaching at MIT for some time, Professor Chomsky continues going strong as one of the most patient, persistent, and preeminent teachers of our time. As listing off even a fraction of his publications could easily fill the 3 hours we have today, I will simply refer you to the chomsky.info website, chomsky.info, where you can find links to hundreds, even thousands of essays, books, interviews, and more. Keeping up with Chomsky's production itself is a full-time job. For today, Professor Chomsky has selected the title, The Common Good, Threats and Resistance. He's agreed to talk for approximately 45 minutes, after which we will have approximately the same amount of time for question and answer and discussion. He said that he may let it go as long as it's interesting, so I trust you, knowing UMass Boston students and faculty and workers alike, I'm sure you'll keep it interesting. If all goes well, we have this room until 6. We ask you, whenever the event does finish, to join us for some refreshments, some light refreshments. I believe they're located in that corner, and to continue the conversation. One final but exciting note. In the interest of extending, deepening, and further publicizing the intellectual exchange that emerges here today, the English Department, the MFA Creative Writing Program, the Honors College, and Writ Large magazine have all co-sponsored a common good writing contest for students here at the university. We are asking for students, whether graduate students or undergraduates, whether writing poetry, prose, imaginary dialogue with the honored professor, to put down in writing your most thoughtful responses to today's talk and to the theme that this talk takes as its title, The Common Good. The extended prompt for that is available. If you would like it, we may have flyers in the back at the various tables I encourage you to check out on the way out today. We also have at least 2 or 3 sign-up sheets where it says the Common Good Writing Contest and Discussion Circle or Network. I encourage you, if you are interested in receiving more information about the contest, or just want to attend to hear the readings and hear those responses, to put your email or phone number down there so that we can include you both for the contest itself and for an event in May. Again, the goal is to extend this dialogue, so this is not a one-off event, but the beginning of a dialogue that continues into the spring and into the fall, the summer as well. Okay, I think that's all I have. So sign up, because we'd like to continue this conversation. As your being here testifies, there are many important issues facing us in this world right now, and it's nothing that, no matter how brilliant Noam Chomsky is today, those issues will still be with us, perhaps clarified, but still with us. And I think that he would unite with the closing sentiment, which is I hope we can honor his talk about the common good by doing what we can together here at UMass Boston and beyond to bring that common good into being, despite whatever assaults we may face in the process. Let's keep the conversation going. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the man who needed no introduction but got one anyway, Professor Noam Chomsky.
The assault that's mentioned in the title is an ongoing one. There are ebbs and flows, but it's constant. It's a form of class war by the wealthy and the powerful, seeking to attain their own ends at the cost of the common good and everyone else. It has different names at different times. It really took off in the modern period with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And it's been, the modern name for it is neoliberalism, which is a misleading name. It's a set of devices to achieve the goals that I mentioned, which are neither new nor particularly liberal. But since the standard name is neoliberalism, I'll keep to it. The neoliberal assault has been worldwide, harmful almost everywhere, except for the rich and powerful, that is, the designers, which is not a surprising outcome. Say a few words about neoliberalism later on. The target of the assault is human welfare, what is loosely called the common good. It's worth spending a few minutes on just what that concept means. Has meant over the years a much contested notion, of course. So let's begin with an Enlightenment version, 19th century version, grew out of the Enlightenment. A fundamental principle of the common good was formulated by one of the leading, most prominent and respected thinkers of that era. I'll quote, "The form of association which, if mankind continues to improve, must be expected to predominate is the association of the laborers themselves on terms of equality, collectively owning the capital with which they carry on their operations and working under managers electable and removable by themselves." The author is John Stuart Mill, one of the icons of classical liberalism, and generalizing what you just said, that all social, economic, and political institutions should be under complete popular democratic control. There should be no masters, no people following orders. That's a classical conception of the common good, the core of classical liberalism, the center of traditional libertarian thought. That view in the 19th century was quite common in the United States as well. There was a lively and influential labor press, primarily in eastern Massachusetts, the center of the Industrial Revolution, and it held, along with Mill, that those who work in the mills should own them. Mills mean any enterprise. The early Industrial Revolution was mostly textile mills. Wage labor was regarded as comparable to slavery, differing only in that it was temporary. In fact, it was routinely called wage slavery. The basic principle was so standard that it was a doctrine upheld by the Republican Party. You could read editorials quoting it in the New York Times. Some groups of workers warned, late 19th century, warned perceptively, I'll quote them, that a day might come when wage slaves will so far forget what is due to manhood as to glory in a system forced on them by their necessity and in opposition to their feelings of independence and self-respect. That is, they might accept the wage labor system as natural, the system of masters and those who follow orders. And they added that they hoped that that day would be far distant. Well, it proved to be less far distant than they hoped, but I suspect that recognition of the demeaning character of wage labor is not very far below the surface and continually shows itself when circumstances allow. Labor activists 150 years ago warned of what they called the new spirit of the age, gain wealth, forgetting all but self. And in sharp reaction to this vulgar conception, the rising movements of working people and radical farmers, it was mostly an agricultural society then, these are the most significant democratic popular movements in American history. They were dedicated to solidarity, mutual aid, and freeing working people in the industrial or agricultural or other sectors, freeing them from industrial, commercial, financial autocracies. These were very powerful movements, the most democratic movements in American history. They were finally crushed by force. Class war in the United States is unusually violent by standards of the industrial societies, but they've risen again repeatedly in later years. Such ideas were right in the mainstream in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, but like the libertarian tradition generally, they were wrecked on the shoals of capitalism, with which they're profoundly inconsistent. In the United States, there is a movement that calls itself libertarian, but if you look at it closely, I think you find that it's radically anti-libertarian, at least in the classical sense of the concept. That's a topic I'll put aside and bring it up if you'd like. Meanwhile, the traditional libertarian conceptions of the common good remained very much alive. So the leading 20th century American philosopher, social philosopher, John Dewey, devoted a lot of his work to these topics in keeping with the traditional libertarian conceptions. He held, I'll quote him, that industry must be changed from a feudalistic to a democratic social order so that workers will be masters of their own industrial fate, not tools rented by employers, in the traditional sense, wage slaves. And more generally, he held all illegitimate structures of coercion must be dismantled. That includes, I'm quoting, domination by business for private profit through private control of banking, land, industry, reinforced by command of the press agents, other means of publicity and propaganda. He recognized that in his words, power today resides in control of the means of production, exchange, publicity, transportation, and communication. Whoever owns them rules the life of the country, even if there are democratic forms. And until these institutions are in the hands of the public, politics will remain the shadow cast on society by big business, much as we see today, and dramatically so in the wake of the neoliberal assault. Remember that John Dewey is about as American as apple pie, comes right out of the mainstream of American tradition, the social philosopher of the 20th century. The United States has been and remains a business-run society to an unusual extent among industrial democracies. And there are many effects of this. The one is that the United States has had a remarkably brutal and violent labor history. Appalled even conservatives in Europe, England, Australia, and elsewhere. Workers were being killed in strikes in the United States into the 1930s, something that virtually never happened in other industrial societies. And it goes way back. In the 19th century, railroads were the big industrial investment. American railroad companies were the last among the industrial societies to install safety devices, even though they had been invented in the United States. And by the early 20th century, around 1910, studies showed that U.S. railroads had far higher rate of injuries than Britain, Germany, the other major industrial societies. The coal miner deaths were about 3 times as high in the United States as Europe. And that continues to the present. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a general study by the OECD, the organization of the 31 rich industrial societies, studying social justice, the various obvious measures of social justice. The United States ranked 27th among 31, right alongside Mexico and Turkey, poor countries. That's a reflection of the same continuing crucial element of U.S. society as distinct from comparable societies. The one very famous case is the international scandal of American health care. This is the only industrial society among the few societies that has privatized health care. The result is costs are over twice as high per capita as comparable societies. The outcomes are relatively poor, a huge amount of inefficiency, tremendous costs. In fact, the costs are far higher than what economists measure, because they don't measure the cost to individuals. They don't measure the cost to you, the hours you spend, say, trying to figure out how to get your health care, get your bills paid, or something like that. You have huge inefficiencies and costs, and traceable right back to the private system. Private insurance companies haven't the slightest interest in health. They're private corporations. They're naturally interested in profit. Same with private hospitals. It is, in fact, an international scandal. Now, which makes it even more striking is that it's radically opposed to public opinion. Even though there is almost no articulate voice calling for national health care, but nevertheless, a majority of the public, often a considerable majority, has favored a national health care system similar to others. It's usually called a Canadian-style system, but that's because the only country anyone's ever heard of is Canada. But it's actually, Canada's not the best by any means, but considerably better than the United States in this respect. so strongly in favor of national health care that by the late 1980s, that's after 10 years of Reagan, about 70% of the population thought that it ought to be in the Constitution. There ought to be a constitutional guarantee for public health care. And in fact, 40% of the population thought it already was in the Constitution because it's such an obvious desiderata. It's kind of interesting when you get to the Obama proposal. There was no discussion of national health care, but it did have a residue of some of the early proposals, namely the idea that there should be a public option, that among the choices people could make would be essentially extension of Medicare, the one part of the public health care system that's more or less efficient because it's public rather than private, that was highly costly because it has to work through the privatized system, which added its inefficiency and costs. There was, at that time, about 2/3 of the public was in favor of a public option. That was dropped without any effort to advance it, simply dismissed. Another astonishing feature of the American healthcare system, again, due to the extraordinary power of private business, is that the government is banned by legislation from negotiating drug prices. So, of course, drug prices are far higher than other countries. The Pentagon can negotiate the prices of paper clips, but the government can't negotiate the prices of prescriptions for Medicare or Medicaid. One exception is the Veterans Administration, where in fact drug prices are much lower. There are a few polls on this. The public is opposed to this by about 85%, but it wasn't even considered in the Obama affordable health care. Just bypassed because of dealings with the pharmaceutical corporations to make sure that they wouldn't powerfully oppose the system that was created. It's very interesting to see public attitudes towards what's publicly called Obamacare. In fact, that term is interesting. So take, say, Medicare, which began in the mid-60s, and nobody calls it Johnson Care. Obamacare is the term is plainly an effort to exploit the racist hatred of Obama, which is shocking. I mean, a lot of people have disliked presidents, but nothing like this, and nothing like 25% of the opposition party, the Republicans, thinking maybe he's Antichrist. That's never happened before. It's a deeply racist country, and it's very hard to avoid it. So it's Obamacare. Even the liberals call it Obamacare. And there's opposition to it, public opposition, even though people are in favor of national health care. But once you associate it with Obama, with the government in massive propaganda about the government interfering in your lives and so on and so forth, then you get public opposition to what the public favor. It's a remarkable propaganda achievement. And there are many other effects of the business-run character of the society with other pretty ugly features like racism. Well, I mentioned libertarian concepts of the public good, common good. There are also what it seemed to us, less radical conceptions. I should say again that the ones we quoted never seemed radical in the 19th century, not the 20th century. John Stuart Mill, as I said, was an icon of classical liberalism. John Dewey, leading social philosopher of the United States. But now we've moved so far to the right that those views are now considered radical. And there are less radical conceptions that are considered less radical. Here's one. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. The phenomenal references can help you date it. This is 1948. It's Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was accepted formally by most countries in principle, not of course in practice. But the United States is a little different. It doesn't accept it even in principle. It rejects the social and economic components of the Universal Declaration, sometimes very strongly. So Reagan's Secretary of State, Jean Patrick, described what I just quoted as a letter to Santa Claus. Neither nature, experience, nor probability informs these lists of so-called entitlements, which are subject to no constraints except those of the mind and the appetite of the authors. So dismiss it with ridicule. Morris Abram, which is the first Bush administration, U.S. representative to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, he tasked the lone veto to the right, what was called the right to development, which closely paraphrased Article 25, dismissed this while casting his veto as preposterous, little more than an empty vessel into which vague hopes and inchoate expectations can be poured, a dangerous incitement. That's the official U.S. attitude towards the rights that I just quoted in the Universal Declaration. And the social justice rankings that I mentioned before reflect that stance. And it's worth remembering that this is the most prosperous country in the world with extraordinary advantages. I share it with no one else. So these results are really dramatic when you think about it. Well, let's take Article 19 of the Universal Declaration. It's about freedom of speech. It says, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. It's worth thinking about that. The United States, in fact, has reached very high standards of protection of speech by comparative standards since the 1960s, actually not before the first major decision by the Supreme Court was in the case of the Civil Rights Movement, in fact. But though it's a high standard, it has a very restricted sense. It's called sometimes corporate libertarianism. Freedom of speech means the right of those who are wealthy and powerful to say whatever they want. That means the corporations who own the media, run them, and so on. So the state can't interfere with what they say. Remember, that's the right to impart. But what about the rest of Article 19? That is the right to receive, to have a wide range of opinion and discussion readily available. The right to impart, again, is controlled, very largely controlled by huge corporations and owners of the media and the advertisers who are the market to which they sell their product. Every business sells a product to a market. The institutional structure of the media is major corporations selling audiences to other corporations. Pretty hard to figure out what kind of content will come out of that, and there's plenty of evidence to show that expectations are satisfied. Now, this has been the meaning of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, has been a battleground throughout American history. In the late 1940s, there were very interesting high-level controversies about how to interpret it all over the world, but in the United States in particular. So the question was, does the First Amendment have only the negative sense that the state cannot bar speech, or does it also have the positive sense that is expressed in Article 19, that is, guarantees of the right to obtain information, to sample opinion from a wide variety of sources? Actually, that's how the First Amendment was understood in the early days of the Republic by the Founding Fathers. That's why, for example, postal rates were set low for publications, and other devices were used to try to encourage a wide range of diverse opinion. That was the early interpretation of the First Amendment. It has succumbed to class war, but many other elements of our society. And by now, the First Amendment, which does have a high standard in one respect, is restricted to the right to impart, which means in practice the right of the powerful to impart, not the right to receive and have access. That's not part of contemporary understanding. Rather, it's what is accurately called corporate libertarianism. Actually, it shows up in many ways. It's one of the very few societies with virtually no public media, very narrow range of corporate media, another indication of a society that's business-run to an unusual extent, called formally free, in many respects, a very free society. It's a useful exercise to look through the Universal Declaration of 1948 and to see how much of it is upheld here. You recall that was produced in the mid-40s as an expression of the global conception of the common good. So there are some provisions of the UD, Universal Declaration, that are upheld, in fact, passionately upheld. In particular, Article 21. Here's Article 21. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. As I said, that's passionately upheld in words. But what about in practice? One of the major topics of academic political science is comparison of public attitudes and public policy, which is a pretty straightforward endeavor. Public policy, you see, public attitudes are sampled in extensive polling, often professionally done, consistent results over long periods of time. You have to pay attention to how questions are formulated, but it's mostly pretty professional. And they're interesting results. And so, for example, one kind of result I've already indicated with regard to national health. Public opinion simply disregarded over long periods. That turns out to be quite general. It turns out that about 70% of the public, the lower 70% on the wealth income scale, are essentially disenfranchised. Their representatives simply pay no attention to their attitudes. So if you sample their attitudes and you look at policy, including their own representatives, there's no correlation. They're disenfranchised. As you move up the scale, you get a little bit more influence, wealth scale. When you get to the very top, which is in fact probably a fraction of 1%, policy is essentially determined. It's not 100% true, but it's overwhelmingly true. So what we have is nothing like democracy. We have a plutocracy. The will of the public is mostly irrelevant. Contrary to, and the public doesn't take part in the government, contrary proclamations upholding Article 21. And the population appears to be aware of this. It shows up strikingly in non-voting. One of the leading political scientists who dealt with this topic for many years, Walter Dean Burnham, pointed out years ago, and this remains true, that if you look at the demographic character of non-voters, who are they? Turns out to be very similar to people in European societies who do vote, but vote for parties that don't exist here. But they vote for labor right or social democratic parties. Here they just don't vote. That persists to the present. There's a very interesting article written by Walter Dean Burnham and Thomas Ferguson, a professor here, very fine political scientist, on the November 2014 election, the last election. They did a careful study of voting. And you can pick it up on the internet. It's very interesting. But what they discovered is that voting last November was approximately similar to about 1830. In 1830, the franchise was limited to property white males. Very narrow franchise. The voting today is approximately the same, and presumably for these reasons. Tom Ferguson is the leading specialist on the relation between campaign spending and policy. His studies go way back to the 19th century, and by now overwhelming. But the same tendencies remain true. These tendencies go far back, but they've been very sharply enhanced in the neoliberal period with the help of the Supreme Court. You're familiar with that, I'm sure. It's a crucial part of the assault on the population. And it's not just in the United States. In Europe, in some ways, it's even worse. The Wall Street Journal, hardly a radical rag, pointed out a little while ago that in European countries, and no matter who wins the elections, there's a range of possibilities. Could be communists, fascists, whoever it is. Policies are the same. And the reason is policies are not established by the major policies, like economic and social policies, aren't established by the government. They're established by bureaucrats in Brussels with the German banks holding a heavy hand on what they do. So that's policy. And whoever you vote for, that's policy. The contempt for democracy has reached such an extraordinary level that a couple of years ago, the Prime Minister of Greece, Papandreou, proposed politely that there might be that he might have a referendum to ask whether people want to accept the policies imposed by the Brussels bureaucracy and the Bundesbank. There was total fury across the spectrum. How dare you ask your population whether they want these policies? They are the right policies. We dictate it and you take it, period. That just happened again after the election of a progressive party in Greece, Syriza, which had called for the population to express its views, brutally attacked by mainly Germans, but by the whole spectrum of thought. Alongside of this assault on democracy in Europe, there's a major assault on Europe's major contribution to the common good in the post-World War II period. That is social democracy, we call it the welfare state. The technique that's been used is an economic policy of imposing austerity during recession. Even the International Monetary Fund recognizes that that makes no sense whatsoever as an economic policy. And you can see it in the fact that the European countries simply don't recover from the recession. In many ways, it's worse than the Great Depression in that respect, including England. So it makes no sense as an economic policy, and that's even understood by, say, the economists of the IMF and many others. So why pursue it? Makes perfect sense as a mechanism of class war. It weakens the labor movement. It weakens social democracy, social welfare. In fact, it undermines democracy. And from the point of view of the powerful and the rich, those are fine outcomes. So it persists. And for poor countries like Greece, it's just devastating. Unemployment is skyrocketing, especially among youth. Poverty is escalating. Public services have been clashed. And supposedly, the purpose of this is to pay off the Greek debt. So what's happened to the Greek debt? It's increased. It's sharply increased. When you reduce production, you increase the debt relative to GDP. So that's actually increased. The Financial Times, the world's leading business newspaper, partly radical, points out that to pay off the debt, Greece would have to operate as what they call a quasi-slave economy. Now, there are bailouts from the European Union that keep giving Greece money, and they talk about how noble they are. Who does the money go to? To the banks, to the French and German banks. Maybe as much as 90%. That's what the bailouts are, not for the people. What's the background of this? Why are the banks, why have they paid off? The banks made investments in Greece, risky investments. They knew it, they're not idiots. They made risky investments. The risky investments tend to give you a high profit, but with the possibility of default. Now there is, now of course they want to be paid off after the default. If anybody remembers, there's a capitalist principle. How does it work? Suppose I lend you money. I lend you money. I know it's a risky loan, so I insist on high interest. I make a ton of profit. At some point you can't pay. Whose problem is it? Well, under capitalism, it's my problem. But under the existing system, it's the problem of your neighbors, the people who didn't even incur the debt, like the population of Greece. It's their problem. So they have to be paid off when the banks made risky and profitable investments and are now facing a default. Radically anti-capitalist, but you have to remember that capitalist principles and market principles are applied for the poor and the weak. The rich and powerful protect themselves from them. They don't have those principles. We see it here all the time, sometimes almost surreal. You may recall a couple of years ago in the midst of the current recession, at one point the huge insurance company, AIG, was going broke. And if they collapsed, they'd bring down a good part of the financial system with them, Goldman Sachs and others. So the taxpayers, you bailed them out, saved them from destruction. Immediately, the next step was that they paid huge bonuses to the executives who were responsible for crashing their company. So that was dramatic enough. This working? I think they immediately paid huge bonuses to the people who were
publicity about it, but there was an answer from people, highly placed people. One of them was Larry Summers, former Secretary of Treasury under Clinton, highly respected economist. He pointed out, this is pretty ugly, but a contract is a contract. Now we have to respect the sanctity of contracts. It promised the bonuses, so they have to get them. At exactly the same time, the state of Illinois decided to cancel pension payments for public workers. No sanctity of contracts, no comment. These are public workers who incidentally had already paid for the pensions. Public workers, if you have a pension plan, say your union has a pension plan, you're lowering your wages. There's a trade-off. You accept lower wages in return for some benefits. That's what a contract is. So here are public service workers who had already paid for their pensions. The contract is meaningless. That doesn't have to be paid. On the other hand, AIG practically destroyed the economy. Their contracts it's just a noble commitment, religious commitment. That's a perfect illustration in almost a real way of what class war is. And it generalizes very far. Let's take the American banking system. Huge part, they're not really banks anymore, but investment firms worldwide. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and so on. A couple of years ago, there was a study by the International Monetary Fund of their profits. What do they get profits from? It turns out they get them almost entirely from the taxpayer. And the way it works is there's a tacit insurance policy. Informally, it's called too big to fail. It means there's an understanding that if anything happens to any of the huge banks, you, the taxpayer, will step in and bail them out. The profits come not only from the publicized bailouts, that's a small part of it. That means they get access to cheap credit, so they get inflated credit ratings because the credit agencies know they're going to be bailed out, and so on. And furthermore, they can make risky transactions. Remember, risky transactions are the kind that are profitable, except with the possibility of collapse. But they don't have to worry about the possibility of collapse, because you, the taxpayer, will bail them out. That amounts to a lot of money. The business press, Bloomberg Business News, estimated the taxpayer subsidy to the big banks at about over $80 billion a year. Other economists talk about building the figure, just what the figure is. Whatever it is, it's huge. So that's a major part of the economy. These are institutions that had about 40% of corporate profits before the collapse. And they're basically on a dole. They're bailed out by the taxpayer. Economist Dean Baker had an interesting column a couple of days ago in which the title was something like Mitch Romney has to have a stake, something like that. But what he was talking about is the fact that the Congress, the Republican Congress, wants to ensure that people on food stamps that eat cheap food don't waste their money on good food. But on the other hand, there's a whole complex system of tax subsidies and shenanigans which he runs through, which permit officials of private equity firms and hedge funds to pay extremely low taxes. So therefore, there's a taxpayer subsidy then to make sure that they can have filet mignon. But people on food stamps, we got to be careful about them. We're supposed to worry about what they're doing. This generalizes over the whole society. And you want to be hit with it pretty soon. And just take a look at the House budget, Ryan budget. It smashes social welfare of the poor, and lavishes the rich with all kinds of goods. It's kind of hidden in various ways, but it's there. Well, that's the way capitalism works. The rich are protected. The rules don't apply to them. The poor, which means the majority of the population, they're the ones who get it in the neck. Well, to understand the ferocity of the neoliberal version of the constant class war, it's worth going back to the Depression, the Great Depression in the 1930s. There was a revitalized labor movement. Labor had been virtually crushed in the 1920s, but it revived in the 1930s. It led the way, as it has through much of history, to bringing about very significant contributions to the common good, the New Deal measures. There was a sympathetic executive, which helped, of course, but it was primarily the activism of the labor movement and other popular groups that drove the process. That's the 1930s. Then came the Second World War. The Second World War led to a wave of radical democracy over much of the world. The struggle against oppression, against fascism, the anti-fascist war, had an enormous effect on much of the world. And it was a big problem for the guys who own and run the world, mostly the U.S. at the time. By the late 1930s, 1940s, the latter few years of the war, 1944 and 1945, the U.S. and Britain, the victors, were already working to undermine and destroy the anti-fascist resistance and to restore the traditional order in Europe, including fascist collaborators. It's a long and interesting story. But there was a counterpart at home. Immediately after the war, the assault on labor and social welfare began almost instantly. Taft-Hartley bill in 1947, first step, undermined standard methods of labor organizing, and it just goes on from there. Through the 1950s, there was a major corporate campaign to undermine labor, to undermine the social welfare measures, to try to mobilize the population to be opposed to government action, which means action that reflects, in a democratic system at least, reflects popular will, and to turn power over to unaccountable private tyrannies. It's called turn it over to the market. That's what it means. It didn't fare very well in the 50s and 60s. There was too much of a residue of the New Deal achievements. In fact, Eisenhower said that anyone who opposes New Deal measures is insane. And Eisenhower, by today's standards, would be somewhere way out on the left. But by the and this continued through the 60s. The activism of the 60s did maintain and even advance the reform systems. But by the 70s, the class war was beginning to take effect. They finally have the system that we're now familiar with. Real wages today, real male wages today, are about at the level of the 1960s. For most of the population, it's been a period of stagnation, relative stagnation, or worse. Political power, as I mentioned, has shifted to what is in fact plutocracy. One of the aspects, one of the elements of the neoliberal assault is deregulation, making sure that the government doesn't interfere with financial institutions. Immediate result, lots of crises. There were no financial crises in the 50s and 60s when New Deal regulations were in place. By the early Reagan years, you start getting crashes. It's getting worse and worse each time. The last one that we're still in the midst of. Notice that this is no problem at all for the perpetrators, because they get bailed out. As I mentioned, the taxpayer makes sure that nothing happens to them, which encourages them to take more risky moves and so on. This is, again, basic principle is capitalism in markets for the poor and the weak, state power to protect the rich and powerful from the ravages of the neoliberal system. The third world, the effects were devastating. In some countries, like they are called the structural adjustment programs imposed on third world countries by the World Bank and the IMF, through the details, but essentially these kinds of policies privatize, hand everything over to private power, introduce what's called labor flexibility, which means do anything you like with the workforce and so on. In some countries like Yugoslavia and Rwanda, it had an absolutely devastating effect in smashing up the societies. It's a large part of the background for the sectarian, the ethnic conflict, and the atrocities that took place in Bosnia and Rwanda in later years. And in many other countries it was very harmful. But one of the Latin America was the most obedient servant of the neoliberal principles, and it had decades of decline, several decades of serious decline. And the same has happened elsewhere. The worst aspect of this isn't discussed very much, but it's critical. It has to do with survival. Just think about markets. To an extent, we have markets. It's a state capitalist system, but there's some reliance on markets. The markets have a property. If, say, you and I make a transaction, say I sell you a car, if we're paying attention, that we make a good deal for ourselves, but we don't pay any attention to the effect on others. That's the nature of a market transaction. Economists call it externalities, put it in a footnote. And the effects can be substantial, like even in buying and selling a car. There's another car on the road, there's pollution, traffic jams, and so on. But there's a much worse case. That's destroying the commons, the environmental crisis. In the market, if you're, say, ExxonMobil, you're CEO of ExxonMobil, your commitment, in fact, legal requirement, is to maximize the production of fossil fuel, which is exactly what they're doing, because that's the most profitable thing to do. That has an externality. Your grandchildren aren't going to be able to have a decent life, but that doesn't enter into market calculations. And the extent to which this is driving us to disaster is overwhelming. As most of you know, there's a meeting in January every year of people who the business press calls the masters of mankind, the rich and powerful. They meet in Davos, Switzerland. And there's an annual poll of chief executives asking them what are the problems they face. This last January, of the poll, there were 19 problems that made it to the poll. Global warming wasn't one of them. Didn't even make it 19th. Worse than that, the top problem that they face is regulation. The one thing that can save it. And it's not because they're bad people. Maybe at home they give money to the Sierra Club. But in their institutional capacity, they have a task: maximize profit and market share, and don't care about anything else, including the fate of grandchildren. That's driving us to a precipice, serious precipice. And that's a very serious consequence of the partial reliance on neoliberal principles. Large-scale reliance, but partial reliance on market principles. Well, there have been reactions. Let me say a couple words about them. The major reactions have been in Latin America, which is what happened is pretty remarkable. For the first time in 500 years, the Latin American countries have begun to free themselves from imperial control. It's very dramatic. By now, the United States is almost isolated in the hemisphere. That showed up at the Panama meetings a couple days ago. Of course, not the way the press describes it. That's very significant. They've begun to integrate, to begin to deal with some of their terrible internal problems. That's a major historical event. It's pretty much marginalized the United States in this hemisphere, which used to be completely run by the U.S. It's beginning to happen in Europe. I mentioned Greece, Syriza, political victory is being beaten down very harshly by powerful, but storms continuing. A bigger case is Spain, bigger, more powerful economy, where a new political party was developed in the last couple of years, and Podemos, might very well win the next election. It's running very high polls, and on the same policies, beat back the neoliberal assault. Today, there happens to be a march. Maybe you can still make it if you try. A march calling for economic justice here in Boston. Specifically, it's calling for an increase in the minimum wage to $15. It's worth looking a little bit at the history of that. Through the great growth periods, 50s and 60s, the minimum wage tracked productivity as it should. The more productive you are, the wage goes up. That stopped as soon as the neoliberal assault began. If it had continued, the minimum wage today would probably be about $20 an hour. It's way above what it is. Now, this demand is for $15 an hour, which is partway towards it. Tomorrow there's a major effort across the country pressing for the same demands. Right to our north, Montreal, Quebec generally, there are huge protests going on with tens of thousands of people against austerity programs, and also critical for us on environmental issues. They're planning fracking right near the U.S. border, strongly opposed. There's a pipeline project to bring East Energy Pipeline to bring oil from the tar sands, extremely polluting, to the East Coast. A lot of opposition to that. It affects us too. These are a fraction of developments that are going on all over the world, including the United States. There's also a striking revival of worker-owned enterprises and cooperatives, mainly in the old Rust Belt. That's reviving the traditional libertarian conception of the common good that I began with could be much greater. In any event, without going on, there's a great amount of ferment throughout the world. We can join it. We have much greater opportunities than people elsewhere, and much more is at stake because of